Welcome to the Cohn Zohn podcast. This is the first episode. I'm Grant Cohn, and this is my dad, Lowell Cohn.
Hi, I'm Lowell Cohn. In fact, I used to be Lowell Cohn. Now I'm kind of a retired guy.
Yeah. And now I'm Grant Cohn. I'm not retired. I cover the 49ers for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. He used to be a columnist for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat and the San Francisco Chronicle back in the 80s and the 90s. We're going to be doing this once a week. And the format that we're going to do is we're going to be discussing all Bay Area sports. But during the football season, we're going to start and focus with the 49ers. And in the future, we'll have guests, but today it's just going to be the two of us.
I'd like to add something to that. There are a lot of great teams in the Bay Area, but the 49ers, no matter what, are always the biggest story.
Absolutely.
Always. More even than, say, the Giants or the Raiders. The Niners are always the biggest story. As a result, I'm always happy to talk about them.
Even when the Warriors were the best team in the NBA and the Niners were down, I still felt the Niners were the bigger story in the Bay Area.
I'd say there's no question about it.
Okay. So today, what we want to talk about, three things with the Niners: what we learned from their game against the Rams, where they stand midweek heading into the game against Seattle, and project ahead to that game, who's going to win and why, and then finally we're going to have a bonus that we won't tell you about. So let's talk about what we learned from that game against the Rams. What is one thing you learned from that game?
Okay. One thing I learned, and again, I'm not a fan. I'm a retired journalist, so I don't root. I tell the truth as I see it. What I saw in that game against the Rams, although the Niners are a good team and try very hard, now that defense is compromised, not their fault, but a lot of really significant key players are out. And you can name some of them, Iggy.
They don't have their nose tackle, DJ Jones. They don't have their speed rusher, D Ford. They don't have D Ford's backup, Ronald Blair. They don't have their best linebacker, Quan Alexander, although Fred Warner's pretty good. But Quan Alexander, he's out. And then Jaquiski Tart, their strong safety, who's been really good this season. He's out, broken ribs. Might be coming back this week, might not be. What I see from the Niners defense is it's not good anymore. It used to be great. It's not good anymore. What they have is some good players who are exhausted because they're playing too much, and an excellent coordinator in Robert Saleh, who was not overmatched by Sean McVay early on, but Sean McVay had a great plan. He outcoached him earlier in the week, had a better game plan, and Robert Saleh adjusted on the fly. I was really impressed by that. But no, I think the Niners are going to have to win high-scoring games the rest of the season.
And what I always learned from my old days is that you entertain with offense, but you win with defense.
Yes.
I mean, Gene Washington used to tell me that all the time. Lowell, you entertain with offense, you win with defense. Well, the 49ers against the Rams were extremely entertaining. The Rams pretty much are not a good team. They're a middle-of-the-road team, and the Niners had a lot of trouble with them. I'm not saying right now that the Niners are not going to do well in the playoffs or anything like that, but if their defense continues to have those problems, they got an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the success of the defense is pretty much down to how clever Robert Saleh is that week because he's working with half a deck. But that's not the only issue I saw with the game in the Rams. The Niners are going to have to overcome a pretty mediocre defense or bad defense the rest of the way. And they have a good offense. They've been scoring a lot of points. Jimmy Garoppolo's been playing well. He has receivers now, but pass protection's an issue. And it's going to be an issue the rest of the season because Weston Richburg isn't coming back. In retrospect, maybe he was the most important player on their offensive line because ever since he's gotten hurt, they've really struggled. He got sacked, Jimmy Garoppolo, 6 times against the Rams, and a few of those sacks were his fault because he doesn't check the ball down. He's like the anti-Alex Smith. Alex Smith would know instinctually where those checkdowns are, and that's not a bad thing because Drew Brees is the same way. A lot of times, those sacks were on Jimmy Garoppolo, and if he gets sacked 5-6 times a game in the playoffs, they're going to have a tough time.
Yeah, but I think let's not go to Jimmy quite yet because we're going to talk about him a lot. But what you're saying is the offensive line is not as stout as it used to be.
No.
So let's go across it. You start at the left tackle with Joe Staley, who is, we're not friends with players, but he is one of our favorites. He's a great guy and maybe a Hall of Fame player. I mean, he's really something.
Certainly one of the best offensive linemen in 49ers franchise history.
Yes. I don't think he's as good as he used to be.
He's given up 2 sacks the last 2 games.
Meaning 2 sacks each game?
1 sack each game.
1 sack.
Yeah.
And we've looked at tape, and you can maneuver around him. He's not as quick as he used to be.
Yeah, when he goes against a really fast edge rusher, you can see he's nervous that he doesn't have the speed to keep up. So he's what coaches call it oversetting. He's overreacting to the speed, trying to get out there, and he leaving himself vulnerable inside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, left guard.
Laken Tomlinson.
What do you?
He's very strong, and he can push a guy in front of him, and he can block a guy in front of him. But if pass rushers start coming from different directions, they start looping around, he kind of plays with blinders on. He won't pick people up. He's given up a couple of sacks the last 2 weeks too. He's strong, but he's not the most coordinated and aware player. Although you could argue he's their best offensive lineman left.
Center.
Backup Ben Garland. He fits the zone blocking scheme in the run game, but as a pass protector, he's not that great. He's only started 8 or 9 games in his career, and he's not an asset.
Right guard.
Mike Person, but he's hurt. He has a neck injury. He actually suited up for the game, but the Niners didn't want him to play and put in Daniel Brunskill to play instead. He started off the season as the backup right tackle, played a little left tackle. Now he's the right guard. He's a former undrafted free agent who was a rookie in 2018, and he played in the AAF earlier this year. Never mind.
Never mind. I don't want that call.
Yeah.
Right tackle.
Mike McGlinchey. He is he might be their best offensive lineman right now, although he gave up a sack last week. He's better in the running game. He's a little bit stiff as a pass protector. So there's no great pass protector on the 49ers offensive line. And they worked around injuries to Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey earlier in the season, but down the stretch, if they're going to win a Super Bowl, they're going to have to win it with a suboptimal pocket. And that means Kyle Shanahan's going to have to do stuff we saw him do earlier this year with a lot of screen passes. We know he can do it, but it's going to take all of his creativity and brain effort.
Where does their run game stand?
Their run game stands. Raheem Mostert's still a good player. He's playing well.
I love watching him work.
It's strange. It's like they won't make him the starter. They keep making Tevin Coleman the starter, and anytime he's in the game, it seems like it's a 3 and out. They'll give him an entire series. Then they'll take him out after the first series of the game, put in Raheem Mostert, and the offense will be great. And then they'll bring in Tevin Coleman every once in a while, and the offense will slow down again. I don't understand why he keeps hanging with Coleman when Mostert is so good. The other guy is Matt Breida, who fumbled twice against the Falcons and didn't play at all against the who they played last week? The Rams. So it seems like he's solidly third on the depth chart. They have a good run game. They average 5 yards a carry against the Rams, and it seems like they kind of lost interest in running it sometimes. They're one of the better running teams in the league. So running and screen passes, and they should be okay.
Coming back to the offensive line, it's a good run blocking line.
It is a good run blocking line. It's what McGlinchey's best at. It's what Tomlinson is best at. It's what Garland's best at. It's probably what Staley's best at too.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan, he is a run first. I'm going to call him a coordinator for the offense. He's a run first guy, and Jimmy, in a sense, plays off runs and draws and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no question. What do you think of Jimmy in that game? What is your impression of Jimmy after seeing him lead a fairly dramatic comeback against a division rival on national television?
It's a really good question. It seems like a simple question with a simple answer, but Jimmy is a very complicated player. He's very complicated. So let me say this. For the most part, I didn't think he played that well.
Not at all?
Yeah.
Entering his final drive, I think his quarterback, or the second to last drive, I think his quarterback rating was 31.
And Iggy, didn't he throw 2 picks?
2 picks, and there was a third one that went right through a defensive back's hands.
So I'm going to say, sometimes, I'm going to use the word sloppy, also sometimes unaware.
Yes.
He seems unaware in a way
sacks were on him.
That Joe Montana never would have been unaware. What I like about him, he can do something really bad, and it doesn't seem to bother him. He gets up, he dusts himself off, let's go get him. I don't think Alex Smith was that way. Jared Goff, Iggy, you can see the confidence draining out of him.
Absolutely.
You can see it.
Yeah.
Jimmy, he's in a sense has no conscience.
No conscience.
And it's so good.
He's like a basketball player who could miss his first 25 shots and make a game winner. Doesn't matter. He still thinks he's the best player on the field.
And as a result, he was able to come drive the team down the field at the end of the Rams game. And he converted 2 3rd and 16s because he had no conscience and such self-belief. And in terms of that, I got to tell you, I love to watch him work.
Yeah, he's only started 25 games in his career, and he's never played a playoff game. And we're going to learn a whole lot more about him. Yeah. But I think what we've learned through about a season and a half of his starts is he pretty much always gives his team a chance to win.
Yeah,
always.
And if you would make a baseball analogy to a pitcher, he's a winner.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo, until further notice, maybe something bad will happen in the playoffs. I don't know. We're up in Seattle. The guy's a winner.
Yeah.
And so you could say, boy, we joke around bad Jimmy, good Jimmy. Well, there's winner Jimmy.
There's winner Jimmy.
And that's the most important thing.
They both show up in games, but usually at the end, it's bad Jimmy. It's good Jimmy on the field, not bad Jimmy. Bad Jimmy's gone usually by the end.
And it's winner Jimmy.
It's winner Jimmy.
Winner Jimmy.
Clutch
And
Jimmy.
so although would I rather have Steve Young? Would I rather have Joe Montana? Yeah. Jimmy's still young. I'm impressed by the fact that he never lets, you could see him. He'll get sacked. He'll walk back into the huddle, and he's up for it.
Yeah, let's compare him to Jared Goff real quick, because I thought it was interesting having them both on the field. With Jared Goff, early in that game, he made about 3 or 4 downfield passes that I felt were better than any throw Jimmy Garoppolo's ever made in his life. Jared Goff can make those throws like Russell Wilson makes.
Rolling out.
50 yards down the field, near the sideline, perfectly in stride.
Yeah.
Make you almost like drop your jaw.
Yeah.
But you know, as the game goes on, if it's tight in the fourth quarter, he's going to throw the ball to the other team, and he did. Marcel Harris just dropped it. You know it, and it's like he knows it too. When you look at his face, you said you can see the confidence draining out of him.
He also threw a pick.
A pick six.
A pick six.
That was basically the difference in the game.
Yeah, and that's what I think is that's him in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Like, here's another way of looking at it. Who would you rather have as your quarterback of your team? Jared Goff or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Here's another way to look at it. Who do you think Sean McVay would rather have as the quarterback of his team? Jared Goff or Jimmy Garoppolo?
That's really good.
Who do you think the Rams would rather have as the quarterback? Everyone would rather have Jimmy. And one more thing about Jimmy, I noticed you're not in the locker room. You retired. I'm there. I can tell probably a top 3 thing that he brings is just how much confidence the other players have in him. That goes a long way. They all believe in him. They all think he's the greatest. And
how do they demonstrate it in the locker room?
They look at him like he's the most special person. Like there's something special about him that has rubbed off on everyone else. Like he's Harry Potter. Like he makes them winners too.
Yes.
He came with all that pedigree. The Niners are really young. Kittle doesn't have pedigree. Deebo Samuel doesn't have pedigree.
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo came from the Patriots, and when he came here, he started winning right away, almost like King Arthur. And there's something magical about him, and I think they feel like the magic rubs off. So it may be horse manure, but what perception's reality? It seems to rub off on him.
I told you what Brent Jones once told me. I asked him, what do you think of Jimmy? He said, well, he came from New England. It's like getting a new computer that's fully loaded.
Yeah.
He's a fully loaded computer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he is.
No question.
He is.
No question.
Sometimes he makes you want to hit yourself in the head when he does, when bad Jimmy's around. But I think he always redeems himself.
He still has a lot to prove. Look, the way I look at Jimmy, he's won some big games, and last week was big, but he's never played in a game that's as big as the one he's going to play this upcoming week. And then the week after that, and then the week after that. So he has test upon test coming up. And I want to remember why I don't like to go overboard with Jimmy praise, because people did that with Colin Kaepernick about 6 or 7 years ago. And Kaepernick was playing great. He won a lot of big games. He won road playoff games. He went to a Super Bowl and almost won it. But none of that meant that he was a great quarterback. To me, what makes you a good quarterback in the NFL is consistency over 3 or 4 or 5 years or more.
Well,
I think that's what it is.
I'd say I absolutely agree, and I want to bring in my old friend Ira Miller.
Yeah.
Because we were talking, we talk on the phone. He lives near Chicago now, but a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Kyle Shanahan, and we were naming the best head coaches in the league, and I said maybe Pete Carroll, Belichick, the guy in New Orleans, Peyton, and I said maybe Kyle Shanahan, and Ira. No, Lowell, no. He has to do it over time. He's had a very good season so far. Let's see what he does in the playoffs, and then let's see what he does year after year. You can't put him up there with Pete Carroll, not yet, or with Bill Belichick, not yet. He's still on the outside looking in. Now we come back to Jimmy. He's done very well. He's never won a playoff game. And I got to tell our viewers and listeners, it's a big threshold to cross to win a playoff game. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard, even at home. And it defines a season, and it defines the head coach, and it defines the quarterback, and the defensive coordinator, and the offensive line, and everybody. And they haven't done that yet. They haven't faced it yet.
No. And the way I look at it, Jimmy, compare him to Derek Carr across the bay.
Yeah.
Derek Carr is a decidedly average quarterback.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say?
With splendid moments.
The way I would define an average quarterback is a guy who can play really well. A guy who can play really, really well, maybe even for 3 or 4 games in a row.
Yes.
But a guy who also has it in him to play pretty poorly.
Yes.
I have some
agree.
bad games.
Yeah.
Basically, a guy who's inconsistent but talented and has terrific moments and good enough to maintain his starting quarterback job for seasons and seasons. Not a guy who's on the verge of getting benched, but a guy who's average.
Okay.
Derek Carr. I think that until further notice, until Jimmy Garoppolo wins some playoff games or proves this for 2 or 3 years, he's in the average category. He's had some great games this year. He's also had some stinkers, and this one against the Rams was real close until he came through at the end. But I also felt like we learned a lot. We're not talking about the Rams. I felt like we learned a lot about the Rams. They are the dogs of the dogs in this division. Yeah. I wouldn't expect them to be much next year.
I got a question. Who's a better quarterback, Carr or Garoppolo? You've said they're both pretty average.
They're both pretty average.
Yeah.
On any given week, it could be either one. Going forward, I think I would take Jimmy Garoppolo just because we've seen less of him. With Derek Carr, we know if you give him a good offensive line, he's terrific. But as soon as he loses Trent Brown or he gets hit a little bit, he goes in the tank. He almost seems like he gets rattled.
I agree.
Gets rattled.
Yes.
He doesn't like contact.
Yeah.
If you can keep him to like 0, 1, or 2 sacks in a game, he can win the MVP. He could play at that type of level.
Yeah.
But once he's got 4 sacks, he's almost like looking for where the hit's coming from, and I don't think Jimmy does that.
And Carr gets a pouty face.
Gets a pouty face.
Yeah.
Also, to me, Carr doesn't look like a leader. I don't think that team. No, I'm not covering that team, but they just don't seem to believe in him.
Right.
The way that the Niners clearly believe in Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe the reason the Niners get to believe in Jimmy Garoppolo and think he's great is because he hasn't played that much. Maybe in 3-4 years of exposure, he'll be a lot like Derek Carr too.
So if I were a head coach, I would take Jimmy over Derek Carr.
How about this? Who would you rather have, Jimmy or Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins has about the same record, and his quarterback rating is much higher. It's just that we've been much more exposed to Kirk Cousins' averageness throughout the years. We've seen it for 4 or 5 years. He's average.
I'd rather have Jimmy. I think Jimmy has more potential. Jimmy is going to be a better quarterback a year from now than he is now. Kirk Cousins isn't.
I'd rather have Kirk Cousins.
You would?
I would.
Ooh, look at you.
I can be a little critical of Jimmy Garoppolo, and he does nice things, but it's time for me to nitpick. He's a one-read quarterback, Dad. He's a one-read quarterback.
Jimmy is?
Oh, he absolutely is. When that first read is open, and the thing about this offense with Kyle Shanahan, it's open a lot because Kyle Shanahan's terrific.
Yeah.
When that guy is open, Jimmy Garoppolo can really rip it and throws a great pass. But we've seen it. He locks on receivers. When he has to scan the full field, he really rarely scans the full field. Kirk Cousins is a very mature quarterback who does all those things. People sometimes say he checks down too much. Jimmy Garoppolo could benefit from checking down a little bit more than he does. So I think that physically they're quite similar, and Kirk Cousins is just much more mature. And we expect that Jimmy Garoppolo will improve and become smarter with experience. Smarter isn't the word. He'll become more mature with experience, but burden of proof's on him.
Do you believe that Jimmy will become more than a one-read quarterback?
I don't know. Colin Kaepernick never did.
Never did. Now, again, I covered Kaepernick. I've never even met Jimmy Garoppolo. I could be wrong. I don't believe Colin had the desire to learn how to read across the field. Joe Montana used to show me.
Yeah.
Bill said, "Lowell, I got to go here, I got to go here," and he was thrilled.
Yes.
And Joe was always, they had playbooks in those days. They didn't have a little tablet. He was always carrying it around and looking at. He was a grind. He was always studying. I don't feel that Colin Kaepernick had the desire to learn. Does Jimmy? I don't know him.
Let's look at it one more. Is it something that you can learn? Maybe it's something you can improve at.
Yes.
Maybe it's a skill. No, maybe it's a talent.
And Joe,
maybe it's a
Joe
God-given talent.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about Nick Mullins very much because he's not starting. But I talked about him a lot in the past. And what I want to say about him is I think his best talent is the ability to process information and read a defense and go through progressions.
Yeah.
He's not big. He doesn't have a strong arm. He's wasn't drafted. He has no physical attributes that the league would say, we need that.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy does. But he has this one thing that I think a lot of the league doesn't look at as a talent. They look at it as a learned skill. And so we'll see. If Jimmy Garoppolo learns it, then it is a learned skill. But I think maybe reading these defenses in the NFL seems like it's an extremely difficult thing to do. It all happens very fast.
And it may just be like, a God-given ability.
It might be a God-given ability.
What I thought about Joe Montana, and I always like to talk about Joe, I felt as a quarterback he was a savant. That everybody talked that Bill was a football genius, and Bill Walsh was.
Yes.
So was Joe.
Yeah.
Joe was a football genius.
Yes.
And I believe he was born with it and born with the ability to talk about a winner.
I don't know that Jimmy's a football genius. He's
Okay.
a lot of things.
Yeah.
He's clutch. He's confident. He's unflappable. He's accurate. He's got a quick release. I don't know if he's a football genius, but Joe demonstrated his football genius in the playoffs in the Super Bowl.
Oh.
So that's all ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo. You couldn't say that he's not. Anyway.
I got another question, and then we'll go to the big topic.
Sure.
I had a lot of I was going to say emails on Twitter. I get people writing back. I was saying I respect Saleh and he's doing a good job. A lot of people are down on him.
Yeah.
The people who write on Twitter, that group, and they said he's giving up a lot of points. And I said, well, his defense is compromised. And they said, Lowell, you always say you're not supposed to have excuses. It's not an excuse. It's context. He has to win. He has to hold teams down, no matter who he has. And if he doesn't, I'll criticize him. Having said that, how do you evaluate him now that so many people are hurt?
I'm even more impressed. I'm even more impressed. I mean, look, I hear what people are saying. Basically, they're saying there's a contingent of people that never gave Saleh credit at any point for this year. When the defense was great the first 2 months, they said, well, it's a bunch of great players. What is Robert Saleh doing? Yeah. So when the players got hurt, some of these fans said, okay, let's see what Robert Saleh does now. And the fact that they're giving up a lot of points, they're like, well, because he needs great players to be a good coordinator. Well, every coordinator needs great players to have. You can't just create a great defense with backups.
Right.
He's got mostly backups on the field right now, and I think the fact that he could give up 21 points early to a Rams offense that was doing stuff they had never done all year. I mean, they did play-action bootlegs every single time, plus screens. They'd never done that before. So for Robert Saleh to see that and to adjust not only himself, but to get all of his young players, rookies and second-year guys, onto an entirely new game plan mid-game and then shut down the Rams the rest of the way was the most impressive thing a coordinator could possibly do.
Yeah, he after they scored 21, he only gave them 10, and his defense scored 7.
Right, so it's a net of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dominance, and without dominant players. What more can you ask for? I think you need to lower the bar of expectations when there are injuries because it's not his job to do magic.
I love it. I'm glad we brought that up. Now let's look to the Seattle game. Let's each.
Well, let's first say what's at stake. If
Very
the Niners
good.
win the game, they're the number 1 seed with a bye week and home games the entire way. They wouldn't have to travel. This would be the last road game of the season. And if the Niners would win, the Seahawks would have to go on the road, be a wild card team, and they wouldn't have any more home games. And vice versa. If the Seahawks win, they get the number 1. They win the division. If the Niners lose, they're like the 5 or 6 seed, and they would have to run the table on the road. That's what's at stake.
Say what's bad about having to run the table on the road.
Well, especially for West Coast teams, that's a lot of traveling. And a West Coast team, I'm talking Seattle, the Bay, LA, Arizona, has never done that, has never won 3 straight road playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. Never even done it. Never even made it to the Super Bowl having been a wild card team.
Got it.
Other teams have, like in the Midwest and the East Coast, because there's less traveling. But out here, you're so far away. If the Niners had to be a wild card team, probably their first game would be in Philly. And they could win that game, but that's 6,000 miles of traveling before they play their next game. So the example would be the 2013 49ers. That was the year after they went to the Super Bowl. They were still a great team, maybe just as good as the year before.
Yeah.
But they had to play 3 straight road games. They won it in Green Bay. We were there. They won in Carolina. We were there. Then they had to go to Seattle. That's tough. You lose. Another example, the Seahawks. They won the Super Bowl in 2013. They had home field advantage. The year before, 2012, just as good of a team, but they had to go to Washington.
Yeah.
They won it. Then the next week, they had to go to Atlanta, and they lost on the final play, and the Niners went to Atlanta and won. So really, this is a must-win game for the Niners and the Seahawks. Whichever one wins it has an excellent chance to not only make the Super Bowl, but maybe win it. Whichever team loses it has almost no chance to make the Super Bowl. They would have to do something historic.
Okay, so for the Niners, because we cover them, not the Seahawks, everything is riding on this game.
Yes.
Everything. Not only the game and their division and their standing in the NFC, but their travel schedule and their ability to go all the way.
Yes.
So it's a big deal.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to say, reluctantly, I think Seattle's going to win that game.
Why?
Okay. Now, I know what's going on with Seattle. I know that their running game is compromised. And as we talk, and this is 12:30 on Monday, we've read that Marshawn Lynch is going to talk to them. Now, is he even in football shape? And so the point is, yeah. So the point is, they're desperate,
Yes.
and it's again not their fault. They're desperate. So I understand that, but we've talked a lot about the Niners' defense. I think I've used the word compromised. I think you saw it against the Rams. To me, the Rams suck. I have no respect for them.
Losers.
They're a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
You know,
They revealed it in the Super Bowl, and it's been a self-fulfilling prophecy the rest of the way.
yeah. So I don't take. Well, first, I don't take that the Niners' defense or offense is all that good.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were challenged so much by the Rams' offense
Down by 11.
is very would, if I were a 49er coach, would be troubling.
Yeah.
So I think, and also to say, come on, going up to Seattle.
Yeah.
When was the last time the Niners won in Seattle?
2011.
It's very hard to win there. Now look, why is it hard to win? Our friend said it was too gloomy up there.
Ahmad Brooks, we used to ask him after every yearly Niners loss in Seattle, we go, Ahmad, what's the deal, man? How come you guys can't win up there? And he'd be like, I know, right? I was just thinking that. And I think it's really gloomy up here all the time. It's rainy. I don't know.
He told us that in the locker room after.
Bless him.
I loved him.
Yeah.
So gloomy up
Yeah.
here. It's like, well, okay. So I guess if he found it gloomy, other people would. And the other thing is this. I hate to talk about the crowd. I hate when those announcers go, the crowd's really involved now. I don't care. But
In football, it matters. Because communication is
yes,
such a big thing.
yes.
Unlike basketball.
And especially at that place.
It's as loud as New Orleans is, Seattle is even louder. And some people think that they illegally, artificially pipe in noise. I have no idea.
Yeah.
We can't hear it.
So
it's that loud. People
Yeah.
are like, is this real?
So
Not only that,
Yep.
they have an artificial turf field, which not a lot of teams have. They have it supposedly because it rains so much up there. But the game is much faster up there. They play faster, and it's an unfair advantage a little bit for them because the Niners aren't built for that. They're built for grass.
So are you agreeing with me that Seattle's going to win?
No, I'm helping you make your point.
Okay, what do you think?
I'm picking the 49ers.
Why?
Last night I was on a podcast with Ryan Leung and I picked the Seahawks. So I'm waffling. But as I hear about all of these injuries that the Seahawks have, I'd have to say that they're even more banged up than the 49ers are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not just that they've lost Chris Carson, their running back. They lost his backup, Rashad Penny. They lost Penny's backup, CJ Procise. And now they're going to Marshawn Lynch. Really, if they had Jeff Wilson Jr., who can't even suit up for the 49ers, he'd be their starter.
Yes.
Not only that, they don't have their left tackle, Dwayne Brown. Jadeveon Clowney's missed a bunch of games in a row. They're missing their free safety. They're more banged up than the 49ers. They're 3-point dogs at home, which means if they were on a neutral site, Vegas would consider the Niners 6-point favorites.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Niners definitely will beat the Seahawks, but they freaking should. And if they go up to Seattle and lose to the Seahawks B team, missing all those guys, it would be, as my grandma would say, a shanda. It would be a shanda.
shame,
You wouldn't
yes.
say, hey, good try, tough environment, good season. You'd say, no, this is a team that finished the season 4-4 that couldn't beat a banged up Seahawks team. And you would have to think if they lose to Seattle, obviously, they're not going to go very far in the playoffs. But I think they're going to win in Seattle, and I think they absolutely freaking should.
And you feel that week, well, let's call it a bye week, will mean a lot to them.
They're tired right now. That's the biggest thing going against them, and they're banged up. I think a bye week could fix, not totally fix, but really help both issues. They could get Dee Ford back. They could get Quan Alexander back. And they could give Nick Bosa rest. They could give DeForest Buckner rest.
He's tired,
Because as those guys have missed time, Buckner, Bosa, and Armstead have had to pick up the slack, and they're exhausted.
Okay, so I say Seattle, you say the 49ers. Are we betting?
Yes. And I want to say I already owe you a bottle of wine from the last bet we made, but I wasn't going to tell you, but it's part of your Hanukkah/Christmas gift.
Oh.
Not the whole thing, but it's part of it.
Okay, I like it.
So yeah, let's make another bet. I'm good for it.
Okay, so another bottle of wine?
Another bottle of wine, yeah.
Okay, but let's say it has to be over a $25 bottle of wine.
Oh, I got you, Kermit Lynch.
Oh, you went over?
It's over 25. I wouldn't do that to you. You kidding?
Okay, I like it.
We got to go bonus, though. We're at 29 minutes. We normally would stop right here.
We'll go bonus.
We got to go bonus.
Because we want you people to see that we can go bonus.
We got to go bonus.
So what we have notes.
Yeah, we were very
We
prepared.
made notes.
Yeah.
These notes here.
Yep. See.
And one of them is most charismatic coaches you ever covered.
Yeah.
So how about since I've covered a lot more coaches than Grant Cohn,
Yeah, you have.
I'm going to start with one you might not expect me to say, most charismatic, Jim Harbaugh.
Oh God.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. You say why?
Well,
We both covered him.
Maybe he should be yours.
No, you go because
Okay.
you picked him up.
I loved covering him. First of all, he had several personalities.
He did.
He did. And so and it was not just us, everybody.
You'd come in on a Wednesday and say, "Is it going to be happy Harbaugh, moody Harbaugh, talkative Harbaugh, monosyllabic Harbaugh?"
Yeah. Argumentative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you would ask a question and he
What
would
do you mean
give
by
you.
that?
Yeah, what do you mean by
What do
that?
you mean by that?
Yeah.
I don't
Or-
agree with the premise of your question. You couldn't even get him to agree on premises. You couldn't. He would just quibble. No, you can't say that.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd say that.
And he was so challenging but so bright.
Yes.
So bright.
Yes.
And he had a wicked sense of humor.
Yes.
Great timing.
Yes.
And I felt it was really a challenge
Yes.
to talk to him. And what I felt, and I'm going to brag here, he felt it was a challenge to talk to Grant and me.
Absolutely.
And there was a twinkle in his eye. And, I used to be there. I used to actually go in the locker room, and I would see Harbaugh would walk through, and he would look for Grant, he'd give him a little, to say we had a good argument today, right? Let's do it again next week.
If I could get in his brain, what he was thinking is, this is the big leagues, and these people who are pretending to lob softball questions at me are not really lobbing softball questions. This is hardball, and these are guys who could run me out of town in a minute. So even though they're pretending to be nicey, I can't trust them. And so I think the thing he respected about us is we never pretended to throw softballs.
No.
We would throw 99 mile an hour heaters up and in. And he would say, okay, at least we're agreeing that this is the big leagues, this is hardball, and you're not trying to pretend that you're my friend. We can do business. I'm in the batter's box, you're on the mound. We both agree on what this is. And he enjoyed the competition.
Oh, I want to take my cuts.
Yeah, I made it. I'm an NFL head coach.
Yeah.
There should be journalists like you two in the front row for every single team because this isn't Stanford or University of San Diego anymore. This is the real deal. He liked it.
He would have also loved Ira Miller and Glenn Dickey.
And the thing that really got him on my side, at least, was basically his attitude was, I don't want to. You come to me after a loss and you say, why did I do X, Y, and Z? You don't even know football. I don't want to explain myself to you. You should explain yourself to me. It's like someone asking you about writing who doesn't know what a sentence is or a paragraph.
Or
you can understand.
Or who says adjectives are the most important.
Right. It's like, I'm not even going to discuss that with you.
See ya.
So what I did, I think 2013, it was a game that they lost in Seattle. And it was Vernon Davis had 0 catches in that game. And instead of saying, hey, how come you didn't throw the ball to Vernon Davis? Which he would have said, how can you even ask me that question? What would you do? Probably what he would say. What would you do? I said, hey, I did a bunch of homework. And I let him know that I did it. I said, Jim, you've been coaching the West Coast offense for a long time. At San Diego, at Stanford, you had a million different ways to get the ball to your tight end. You could do Y stick or Y stick looky or the stick nod. I mean, you've called those plays a million times. How come you couldn't call that in Seattle to get the ball to Vernon Davis once? And he looked at me, he was like, Y stick? He's like, well, we did call the stick. We called the stick once. We didn't call the nod or the looky. But I'm glad we're talking the same language.
Yeah.
He was like, wow, like you did your homework. We're speaking the same language.
I was there.
And then after that, he was always cool with me. Anytime I wanted to say, how come you didn't roll out the quarterback or why didn't you X, Y, Z, he would kind of have a smile on his face like, this kid's got a lot of gumption. Good for him.
Tell him what Y stick looky is.
Y stick looky. Y stick looky is a variation. The Y stick is the tight end runs 6 yards and does a curl route, basically. Runs 6 yards, comes back. It's an easy way to get the ball to your tight end. The stick nod is you do it in the red zone a lot. You fake the curl and you keep going deep. It's a good way to get him to touchdown. The looky is a slant on the backside. So if the defense is really overplaying and sending a bunch of defensive players over there to stop the stick and the nod, you can run a slant on the backside to a wide receiver who will be wide open. That's the looky.
Oh, it's another player.
If the defense is overplaying the stick, then take a looky over to the left side.
So it means take a
looky
second
over
read.
a second
looky.
read, yeah.
And when you said that to Harbaugh, he thought we're speaking the same grammar.
Absolutely.
We're speaking the same language.
And he was thinking, I've never been around a beat writer who's actually taken the time to learn this stuff.
Right.
All they do is they think they know everything about football and say, how come you didn't get the ball to your tight end? In retrospect, thinking it's easy. when I was actually saying, how about these 3 plays that you've called a million times? Where were they?
Yeah.
And he was like, man, well, first of all, I called the stick. Give me some credit. I called the stick, and I went back and he did. It's just Colin Kaepernick didn't throw it to him.
Oh, what a surprise.
Yeah.
Let's tell, I know you have to pick your charismatic coach if you care to,
Sure.
but let's tell remember what happened that time in St. Louis? Were you with me that time when Trent Baalke yelled?
Oh, it's a great story.
Okay.
Yes. This was St. Louis.
This was St. Louis.
I think they were winning the game.
Yeah.
It was really out of place. What you got to remember what you got to know, at Levi's or at Candlestick, you wouldn't be sitting right next to Trent Baalke. He'd be in his own booth.
Yeah.
But on the road, a lot of times he would sit right behind us. And I think that was maybe his choice. Maybe he wanted to hear what we were saying. Who knows?
He was in the press box.
So he could hear us, we could hear him. And
Yeah.
sometimes he would make a point to say things really loud in front of the media.
Well, this one time they were playing the Rams and winning. And Colin Kaepernick, they were near the goal line.
I think they were actually backed up on their own. The way I remember it is they were on their own side of the field. It was an innocuous play in a game that they were going to win in the second half.
And
he just started scrambling. Scrambled for 4 yards. And we're thinking, like, most of us aren't even really paying attention that much because the game's kind of over, I think. And it's just a nothing play. All of a sudden, what do you hear?
Baalke jumps up in his seat. And remember, he's with the media and he goes, throw the damn ball.
That really happened.
That really happened. And what it meant was, one, you should have thrown the ball, but it also meant, I don't think you throw it enough. You run too much.
And it also meant, who the hell is coaching this guy?
Right.
Jim Harbaugh is deficient. That was because remember, Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh allegedly were in the most epic of Cold Wars or Hot Wars.
Yeah.
Anyway, we want behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that was his comment in front of the media.
Yeah.
That guy's a quarterback whisperer. This is supposed to be the second coming of
You're right.
Steve Young. These are a couple of frauds. And we couldn't believe it because they were going to win that game and go to the NFC Championship game that year.
And he had a reputation, this you should know, people, of undercutting people around him. Baalke did. Now, whether or not he was like that, I didn't know him well enough. But he did have that reputation, and he did it that day.
And, you were talking about the most charismatic coaches. Baalke wasn't a coach. He wasn't that charismatic, but he was one of the most interesting sports figures
There you
I've
go.
ever covered.
Let's hear. Why?
Because he was Machiavellian.
Oh!
He outlasted his talent level 3 or 4 times. He was a scout who got promoted because McLuhan had a drinking issue, and maintained that GM job for about 10 years, even though he was terrible. And he maintained it by basically cozying up to power, by making himself very, very close with all the people he needed to be close with in the 49ers. That was interesting. But then as things went against him, as it was clear the last couple of years where, everyone hated him. There were fans were, purchasing banners to be flown over the thing saying "Fire Baalke." He became much more human, and he would come up and talk to us.
Oh.
He was confessional.
Yeah. Remember, they had a preseason workout at Kezar Stadium.
Yes.
And here's the thing. Baalke didn't like us because we were critical.
Yes.
All of a sudden, Baalke is standing in front of Iggy and me.
Yeah.
And you would have thought we were best friends. Blah, blah, blah. How you doing?
How's it going?
How's it going?
Like,
And
we're
when
having a conversation?
and then he left, and we looked at each other, and we said,
He's in trouble.
He's in trouble. He's scared. He's going
trouble.
to lose his job.
That's the pattern. A lot of times, these guys, when they're good, it's like they don't have the time of day for you.
You're right.
But when they start feeling like their job's at jeopardy, then they want to they want to network.
They want a network.
One more thing about Baalke, and this was, I think, the defining characteristic. If you were writing a book, and he was one of your characters, and you needed like one little detail to sum him up, at those pre-draft press conferences, he would come in the room, and there would be about 10 to 15 journalists.
Yeah.
What you do is you would bring your recorder over, and everyone would put their recorders right in front of them. You've seen it. Happens at every press conference. You just go over to the table. Everyone just throws their recorder on and the table and goes back. And you do business. Trent Baalke is the only person I've ever seen who takes 10 to 15 seconds before the press conference to line up every single recorder in a perfect row. It was like one of the most obsessive compulsive disorder things I've ever seen, and I think it really spoke to the quirks in his personality.
Yes, he also would line up pens. If
Yes.
he had pens, he would do that too.
Yes.
Yeah, he wanted order and he wanted control.
Yes.
Right.
And it's clear that he couldn't have either of those things with Jim Harbaugh in the building.
Right.
It was impossible for those two to work together.
It freaked him out, so he was working on the microphones.
Yeah. And when he was screaming about Colin Kaepernick in front of us, he was straightening out the disorder in his staff.
You must have been an English major.
Hey, you like that?
I like
I'm
it.
good with themes.
Okay.
I'm good with themes.
I think we should end it now.
I think we should end it right there.
Well, Iggy, I just love doing this.
I love doing it with you too.
Okay.
Let's do it
We'll do it
for
next
Monday.
week. We'll do it next week.
See you next time.